If you think corporations bought free speech before, now that they're human, they'll buy even more. Yeah, their money has free speech.
Years hired Ayer, which is an advertising agency, and their goal was to make the diamond a psychological necessity and something that was required for husbands to buy, or about to be husbands to buy their fiancés. And it was such an incredibly successful ad campaign that by 1942, 80% of engagements were consecrated with a diamond engagement ring.
Hello and welcome to the Alliance for Democracy's The Populist Dialogues. This Populist Dialogues program's purpose is to advance the mission of the Alliance for Democracy to create a just society based on a sustainable, equitable economy. I am your host, David Delk. Our guest today is Dr. Martin Donohoe. Dr. Donohoe is an adjunct associate professor in the Department of Community Health at Portland State University and senior physician at Kaiser Permanente Sunnyside Hospital here in Portland. He serves on the Social Justice Committee of Physicians for Social Responsibility, as well as on their board of advisors. He is the editor and chief author of Public Health and Social Justice. And he's returning as our guest today, as he was here back in May. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you back.
It's nice to be back.
Good, good. So you've developed a PowerPoint presentation titled Symbols of Love, Flowers, Diamonds, and Gold. So what got you interested in this?
I was starting to think about 10 years ago quite seriously about the purchases that I was making and where things were sourced from and what human rights might be violated in the production process and how it might affect the environment and how it might affect the status of women worldwide. And I was in love at the time, so I started to think about what are the things that we in society use to demonstrate our love as gifts. And the top three came in as flowers, cut flowers, diamonds, and gold. Mm-hmm. And I looked into this and realized that at least as far as diamonds and gold are concerned, that the diamond engagement ring is merely a cultural construct that is the product of an incredibly successful advertising campaign that was initiated by the De Beers Mining Company, which has a rather sordid history, which hopefully we can discuss. Mm-hmm. And that it's not something that existed for all time, and in fact it's a 20th century phenomenon and a marketing tool, and that the production of these three products involved significant damage to the environment, harms to women, and really horrible human rights abuses up to and including involvement in terrorist operations, including those involving Al-Qaeda.
Oh, okay. All right. So go ahead and talk about some of those consequences for us.
So I guess maybe what we should do is talk about one at a time.
Yes.
Could we divide them into threes?
Yeah, let's talk about the diamonds first.
So diamonds were first discovered in India in 800 BC, and but they were created in the formation of the earth under tremendous temperature and pressure. It's basically just carbon mm-hmm. in another form. And
I'm surprised we don't burn them as a fossil fuel.
Well, it's a thought. In fact, they've discovered a planet that's made predominantly of diamonds that's around another star in our galaxy. And in 1888, around the time that diamonds were starting to be mined in South Africa, Cecil Rhodes, who was the founder of the state of Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, the namesake of the Rhodes Scholarship, started the De Beers Mining Company. And today they control basically 40 to 45% of the world's diamond market. And about $2 billion worth of diamonds are extracted from the earth every year, but these are sold for $71 billion. So there's a tremendous markup involved. And De Beers was rather crafty, and in fact, Rhodes, I have to read this quote because it's a dramatic explication of how we subjugate peoples in the third world, take the resources that we can from them, and then send our junk back. So this is Cecil Rhodes speaking. We must obtain we must find new lands from which we can easily obtain raw materials and at the same time exploit the cheap slave labor that is available from the natives of the colonies. The colonies would also provide in turn a dumping ground for the surplus goods produced in our factories. So in 1939, De Beers hired Ayer, which is an advertising agency, and their goal was to make the diamond a psychological necessity and something that was required for husbands to buy, or about to be husbands to buy their fiancées. And it was such an incredibly successful ad campaign that by 1942, 80% of engagements were consecrated with a diamond engagement ring. And in 1999, Advertising Age magazine named the campaign slogan, "A Diamond is Forever," the most successful ad campaign of the 20th century, recognized by 90+% of Americans.
Yes, as soon as you said that, a little lever or something clicked over
You
in my
know
mind.
that
I
one.
was like, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's rather ironic
yes.
because that year, Nicky Oppenheimer, who's the head of De Beers, was quoted as saying that diamonds are intrinsically worthless except for the deep psychological need that they fulfill. And so as part of this ad campaign, men were instructed, or I should say compelled, to spend 2 months' salary on an engagement ring. So that's kind of become the standard too. But if you look at how diamonds are produced, they are taken out of the earth in very well-guarded operations. They're mixed with silica dust and asbestos, and the workers are thus exposed to those products and are at higher risk of developing asbestos lung, silica-related lung disease, which puts them at higher risk of tuberculosis, and of course they don't have health insurance. It's a male-dominated labor force, and when diamond mines are created, they're often created on the lands of indigenous people who are basically forced off of those lands, often in collusion with the military of a corrupt central government, with no meaningful compensation. And their land is destroyed, the water table is reduced, men are taken out of the labor force, out of agriculture, and there's displacement of land that used to be used to produce crops for agriculture for local consumption, and they work in the mines. There's child labor, there's sexual slavery, and these mining operations have been a major factor in many wars that have taken place in the last few decades in sub-Saharan Africa that have caused about 3.8 million deaths, looking at places like the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Sierra Leone and elsewhere.
And so originally the diamond industry was based on violence.
It's deeply rooted in
Deeply
violence.
rooted in violence,
Yeah,
right.
the structural violence of upturning local communities and extracting resources. And it's important to note that the profits from diamond mining flow predominantly to middlemen, corrupt central governments, and to foreign nationals and to foreign companies. Very little is reinvested in local economies.
Right, and that's actually the case with so many, quote unquote natural resources that are developed. There's very, very little actually goes into the local economies. That at least within the United States, when those kinds of things happen, we do sugarcoat it and say, well, it's helping the local economy, it's creating jobs, and all of this stuff.
And of course, the costs of the environmental destruction are still externalized to the population at large for the cleanup and the costs of the healthcare for the employees. But you're right, the money at least does quite often stay in local economies here in this country, but it doesn't stay in the local economies there. And so these countries essentially suffer from what's called the resource curse, meaning that the more of these rare natural resources a country has, basically the lower the quality of life in that country. In fact, if you live near a gold mine, to transition to gold for a moment, public health estimates are that you lose almost 13 years of productive lifespan because of the hardships of either working in the mines or the destruction that's wrought by the mines themselves.
Okay, all right. So we're talking about diamonds, gold, and flowers. So let's move on to one of the other two.
Why don't we talk about gold,
All right,
because
let's
we can
talk about
transition from the engagement ring
yes,
onto the gold
right.
wedding band, which really has a similar marketing
Yeah,
story.
which frequently get put together.
And in fact, when I give this talk to audiences, I offer them the opportunity to remove their rings because many people feel quite queasy. And in fact, it's something that most people just don't even know about. And there's the myth that gold mining is this old guy with a beard and a hat out panning gold, and it's all very eco-friendly, whereas the reality is much, much worse. And half of gold that's mined today comes off of indigenous lands, and 3/4 comes from areas that are sites of high conservation value, either natural parks, World Heritage sites, or their immediate boundaries. But creating a gold wedding band is something that is environmentally destructive to the tune of just an 18 karat, I'm sorry, 1 carat, that'd be quite a lot of carats, a 1 carat ring, 3-ounce ring, creates 18 tons of mining waste. And the reason for that is that the gold is taken out of the earth where it's mixed with lead and silica. And so where mining takes place, there's huge outbreaks of lead poisoning, and lead, which we had in leaded gasoline for many years, is a significant neurotoxin and also toxic to our body's ability to produce blood cells. Then what happens is tremendous amounts of water are used to basically pressure hose the gold out of the walls of the gold mine, where it's mixed with cyanide, which combines with the gold to remove it from the ore and create this amalgam. And cyanide is a cellular paralyzing agent. Basically, it can make you stop breathing. And then to extract the gold itself from that mixture, mercury is added. And mercury is also a significant neurotoxin. And in fact, 30% of the mercury that gets into our oceans and works its way up the food chain to the top predator to fish, and then to humans, and then to the nursing infant. 30% of that mercury comes from gold mining. The majority comes from coal-fired power plants. So there's a lot of pollution that's created, and this pollution, the cyanide, the mercury, the lead, is all contained in water that stands behind large tailing dams. And when these break, as they did, for instance, in Romania in 2000, there was a dam that broke that basically polluted the watershed of 2.5 million people who lived in the Danube River basin. And there was a similar breakage in 1995 in Guyana with the Omai gold mine that was there. So, yeah, horrible environmental destruction.
Yeah, okay. So how was there an advertising campaign around gold?
It's been quite similar, and again, there's the pressure, and it's such that these have become so ingrained in the mindset of people that they feel like they have to have a gold wedding band. And I think one could buy eco-friendly gold. One could get recycled gold. One can get locally panned gold. You can actually go to Scotland and other places and pan for your own gold. But the problem is, if you're wearing that ring, and I certainly don't mean this as a disparagement of you, if one were to look at my global carbon footprint, it would be gigantic. So I have many of my own contributions that I'm not proud of. That being said, you're perpetuating this contract. You're perpetuating the societal belief that in order to display your love, you have to have on your finger something that's a symbol of human rights abuse, of war, of destruction, of death, of tremendous violence. It would almost be like, as a symbol of getting married, walking into a synagogue with a T-shirt of Hitler on the front. If you can try to picture what it would be like for the people who are involved in the mines and who lose family members or who lose limbs, as they did in Sierra Leone. So
yes, you sent me, or I saw on your website the PowerPoint presentation. There was one picture which was particularly powerful for me, and it was of an African sitting this way. except that as I looked at it, I realized there were stubs.
Right.
There were no hands.
Right.
I was like,
And I want to correct something I said earlier. I said a 1 carat, and I guess I don't know my carats well, in part because I'm not married, but I don't have a gold band either. It is 18 tons of waste for an 18 carat ring. So
oh,
that's,
okay.
yeah, 18 tons of mine waste.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around how much that is.
Right.
Yeah. I think that in your PowerPoint presentation, there was also some pictures of gold mines with the pits.
Yeah, in fact, I should mention that the PowerPoint presentation is available on my website, which is publichealthandsocialjustice.org, or just phsj.org. And on that website, I have about 150 open access PowerPoints, which means that with appropriate citation, I'm happy if you steal them and use them for whatever educational or activist purposes that you would like. And you can see some of the beautiful photos from Sebastião Salgado of conditions in these mines. And you can also look at some of the photos of W. Eugene Smith, who documented methylmercury poisoning in Minamata Bay, Japan, and its effects on reproductive health. So I invite people to get those visuals because it's true that a picture can paint 1,000 words when it comes to this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can really grab you, whereas otherwise you're just intellectualizing.
Right.
But right, yeah. Yeah, so you use the phrase resource curse. And there's another one in your slides. I don't know if you've used it yet or not. Casino economy.
Casino economy.
Talk about those two.
Yeah, it's kind of like the economy that those of us who are mathematically challenged exist in when we buy lottery tickets and think that we're going to be the person winning the $1 million prize. There are millions employed, 12 million adults and 1 million children work in mining worldwide, and mining's the most dangerous industry on the planet. And the vast majority of them make very little and have no health insurance coverage and struggle to put food on the table. But the reason they keep coming for the jobs is that A, they're desperate, and B, there's this hope in the back of their mind that I'll be the guy to discover the big chunk of diamond, and I'll get my share, which, albeit small, will make things right for me and my loved ones for the rest of my life. But the vast majority of them work themselves quite literally to death in the mines.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How does gold and diamond mining lead to war and terrorism?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Diamonds, for instance, are highly transportable. They're a great way to convert money into tiny assets that can be smuggled across borders, that can be used to fund terrorist operations. And because there's so much profit to be made from gold and diamond mining, it's often the most corrupt countries where the mines are located. And there's paramilitary organizations that guard these. For instance, in Indonesia, there is the Grasberg mine, which is owned by Freeport-McMoRan, which is an American company. It's the largest gold mine on the planet. And they've been implicated by human rights groups in everything from murders, rapes, torture, extrajudicial executions, aided and abetted by the Indonesian military. And in the Philippines, there's another mine, Echo Bay Mines Limited, and they have been implicated in paying off Abu Sayyaf, which is the Philippine branch of Al-Qaeda, protection money to keep the mine open. And then that money goes to that branch of Al-Qaeda, becomes part of Al-Qaeda's international operation. So in a sense, you are quite directly supporting terrorism when you purchase a gold wedding ring or a diamond engagement ring, and by the worst organizations on the planet.
Right, yeah. And I've heard of some programs that certify gold and or diamonds as being not generating wars. I'm not sure exactly what the right term is.
Yeah, there are some very sincere people who are working in this area. And with respect to diamonds, it's the Kimberley process, which is an international scheme that involves country of origin, packaging, which is secure to make sure that the diamonds are conflict-free, kind of adding to the 3 C's
that's
of
what, right.
cut, clarity and color, conflict, making that the fourth C. And the United States is a signatory to this treaty through a law that was passed by our Congress a number of years back. Unfortunately, the kinks are still being worked out. It's estimated by the State Department that about 10 to 15% of diamonds are so-called conflict diamonds. Global Witness, which is one of the major NGOs working in this area, says it's more like 20%. With respect to gold, there are a number of groups again involved. The most well-known is probably the No Dirty Gold campaign. And if you check on their website, and you'll also see in my PowerPoint, you can see which companies, which jewelry stores have signed on to these various agreements and offer gold and diamond that are war-free, terrorist-free, conflict-free, at least as best as we can.
And a company, a retailer signing on to this, are they saying that all the gold that they would sell would be conflict-free, or that you have to buy the piece that's certified?
Yeah, it means that they're trying to work within the guidelines, and I think it varies from company to company, whether it's the piece or the whole company. In general, they're signing on as a company, so it's anything that you can buy from them. However, the problem is these materials, the golds and the diamond themselves, get shuffled from so many person to person around the planet that it's hard to keep that chain of custody in place. And thus, I would argue that the best thing to do is to find an alternative symbol of one's affection that you can give. You can buy recycled eco-jewelry made by indigenous peoples in the developing world, where the money will go straight back to them and be reinvested in local economies. You can, instead of getting your partner a diamond engagement ring, make a donation to charity on your behalf, and start your lifelong relationship with something that says, we not only care about each other, we care about the world, and we want to create a world that's going to be better for our future children someday. So there are other ways to approach this.
Okay, all right, yeah. So we haven't talked about flowers yet.
Oh yeah, so flower. I have to say, when I talk about this, everyone thinks, "Oh, Martin, you're such a downer. You're never going to find someone to fall in love with. They're going to determine that they're not going to get anything from you, not even flowers." It depends on where the flowers come from. Only a third of the flowers that are sold in the United States are produced in the United States. More than half of them come from just two countries, Colombia and Ecuador. And it's a very large market. There's almost 200,000 people working in floriculture. Some of them are children. The workforce is predominantly female, which is a problem because they are subject to a lot of sexual harassment. They can be fired at will for such simple things as having a UTI, which means that they're in the bathroom frequently. They can be fired for pregnancy. The workers are often shuffled from one job site to another by the same company so that they don't have to pay any kind of Social Security benefits. It prevents them from forming a labor union and organizing, and it displaces women from agriculture and displaces the agricultural economy, where they're growing crops that they need to feed their families, to growing flowers to be sold overseas. The other thing they do is they require a lot of water. So a dozen roses uses 120 liters of water, and that can lead to a drop in the local water table, which means that women, and it is women who do this, have to walk farther and farther each day to get potable water. I'm sure you're aware of this, but the average woman in the developing world today has to walk 6 miles to get clean water for her family, and it makes that distance greater and greater. And so also the workers work with a large number of pesticides, many of which are illegal in the United States, which is somewhat ironic because the USDA inspects imported food for pests, but it doesn't inspect flowers for pests, and it doesn't inspect for pesticides. And so when they measure the pesticide labels on some of the flowers that you buy at your supermarket, they can be up to 50 times the amount of pesticides that are allowed on crops in the United States.
Wow.
So little kids will do this.
We've got just a couple more minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Is there any way to, again, flowers, is there any certification?
Yes,
that,
yes.
Are they grown in the U.S. labels?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, buying locally is the best way to buy flowers. And buying at farmers markets where you can actually get to know the person who's growing the flowers and ask, are they growing them pesticide-free? How do they treat their workers? I would say that's ideal. There is something called the Veriflora certification system, which is a certification scheme that's being rolled out internationally that's designed to provide labor rights, environmental damage mitigation, water resource use, labor organizing, surprise inspections.
Okay.
But I would also encourage people to go to the supermarket and when they're buying flowers say, hey, what do you have that's local? I'd really like to see you source from local farmers.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is buy local.
Yes.
And stop the consumerism.
Please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Martin.
It's been a pleasure, David.
Okay,
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Excellent. Our guest today has been Dr. Martin Donohoe. Dr. Donohoe serves on the Social Justice Committee of Physicians for Social Responsibility. He is editor and chief author of Public Health and Social Justice. If you found this program interesting and or hopefully disturbing, you might want to watch our earlier program with Dr. Donohoe on public health and social justice. View it at www.populistdialogues.org/2012-programs-html. Scroll down to program number 13-21. You also might want to visit his website, Public Health and Social Justice, at www.phsj.org. Don't forget, you can watch Populist Dialogues on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/populistdialogues to view most of our past programs. And when you're there, click on the subscribe button so that when a new program is uploaded, you will automatically receive an email notice. If you're watching on YouTube, you can help us expand our viewership. Contact your local cable access station and see how you can sponsor a weekly broadcast of our program. Most local stations are looking for good material and will welcome the suggestion. Populist Dialogues is a project of the Portland Alliance for Democracy. Learn more about us at afd-pdx.org and about our national organization at thealliancefordemocracy.org. So thank you to Roger Bates, Joan Horton, Brad Leach, Janet Morris, and Tom Thomas for their volunteer time getting us on the air. And thanks to all of you for watching. I hope we'll see you again next week. Bye.
If you think corporations bought free speech before, now that they're human, they'll buy even more. Yeah, their money has free speech, to me quite a shock. 'Cause I never heard my money talk. When a corporation has a colonoscopy, then I'll believe they're human like me.